We have to verbringen with a niggin. The niggin that I'll teach you or sing with you, and I hope those that know it can sing with me, is the niggin that's attributed to the Baal HaHilula. Today, Yud Shvat, is the yahrzeit of the sixth Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchok Schneerson. He passed away in 1950 and 770. He's the one that they bought the building in 1940 for him. At the time, he was confined to a wheelchair. They needed a building in which they can have a residence for him and for one of his son-in-laws, a base medrash, and also a very important thing, an elevator. To find such a building in Brooklyn is not easy. But this building was built by a doctor, a wealthy doctor, who actually had an abortion clinic in this building. 770, people don't know, used to be an abortion clinic. No way. And what happened? They caught this doctor and they put him in jail. So the hemshich to that, the building was for sale, and punkt at the right time, the Lubavitcher Chassidim that were in America from the 1920s found this facility so that the Rebbe could be there and live there. Another thing that people don't know is that where was the Rebbe when he came? The previous Rebbe came in March of 1940. He was saved, the Nazis in Machshemah, and he came new. So he went first to a hotel that's owned today by a Satmar family, the the ones who owned Abracadabra, what is it called? The electronics store in Manhattan. Huh? No, not the other one. The other one. Huh? Adarama. Yeah. Thank you. So I believe they own the building. It's called the Greystone Hotel. And that area of Broadway in the 1930s and 40s, 50s, it was owned by Yidden, not necessarily all were, the Frume Yidden, but it was owned by Yidden, and a lot of Rebbes and Rabbonim that used to come used to stay in those hotels. The Frierdiker Rebbe stayed in the Gravestone Hotel. No, you're there. So Chassidim said to him, Pesach is coming, why don't we'll try to find a place, and guess where? Lakewood. Lakewood was a resort town, as Chaim told me, and we were driving up together, and thank you very much. And there was a Rav here, I forget now the name, he was a very known Rav.
Nissen Waxman.
Yes, thank you. Nissen Waxman, he was a personality, and he did a lot for Yiddishkeit, for Chassidim, and the Litvische. He was a klalistic person. And there was a Yid here named Charles Paston. Charles Paston had a house. I filmed it. It's in Lakewood on a corner. It's like 2 blocks from BMG. That corner house, it's not the original house, but that piece of land is where there was the house in which the Frierdiker Rebbe stayed, 2-3 blocks. So the Frierdiker Rebbe was here before Rabbi Aron Kotler came to Lakewood. He was here in 1940, I'm serious. Then later Rabbi Aron came and made the yeshiva and all that. So he was here for 2 months or so, I think about 2 months and a half, 2 months. And then they got the house in Crown Heights, and that's where the Rebbe settled. And he lived there from 1940 to 1950, and his istalkus, his passing, was Yud Shvat, Shabbos morning, about 10 to 8 in the morning. And that's why Lubavitcher Chassidim celebrate this day. But another very important thing happened this day, that for us, meaning for us, for the Chassidim of America, in other words, there was Chassidim who came from Europe, like many of your grandparents, and other countries. The same time, a year later, after the Frierdiker Rebbe, the yahrzeit of the Frierdiker Rebbe, Yud Shvat, 1951, the Lubavitcher Chassidim identified the Rebbe, our last Rebbe, to be the Lubavitcher Rebbe. That was the day when he became the Nossi of Chabad. The word Nossi is a word that we know it in the Torah, but in Lubavitch it became identified and focused by the last Rebbe. Okay? What is a Nossi? This is important because a Nossi was the issue that some Rabbanim and Rebbe, not so much Rebbes and Litvish Yeshivas and leaders had an issue with this Nossi concept. What's a Nossi? Nossi means a leader. We have the Nesiim. So the Rebbe said that his shver is a Nossi. So Rabbi Hutner said, what's this business of calling a Rebbe? Rabbi Hutner knew what a Rebbe is. He knew what a Shiva is. He says, but what a Rebbe is, I never heard. A Nossi, a Rebbe, a Nossi. And this is something that bothered him and bothered, let's say, the Brisker of. And this was an issue that a lot of people could not relate with. But the Rebbe continued with this concept till his last day. And he explained it many times. So when I use the word Nossi, I'm referring to a Lubavitcher Rebbe. Not, I don't know if you said, not even if you for Rebbe is a Mashiach, or not a Mashiach, independent of that, a Nossi. A Nossi. What's a Nossi? So there's a sefer called Kehillas Yankiv. It's not the Stipler sefer. You told me you're writing about the Stipler. That's not the sefer I'm talking about, but a Kabbalah sefer. And in there it says that a Nossi is a Rosh Hashanah, Nitzutzoi Shel Yaakov Avinu. He's a spark of Yaakov. And the Rebbe made a big point about this, and the Mashpiyim, brought by Mashpiyim Rabbi Yochanan, who was the biggest thinker of Chabad Chassidus and probably Chassidus Bechlal in the last 70, 80 years, or maybe 200 years, but not, that's a different parsha, a different discussion. So, I believe you knew Rabbi Yoel, from Yeshiva, yeah, we knew we were in Yeshiva together. And, yeah, so this idea of a Nossi, the Rebbe coined it, and the Rebbe went with it, and he was proud with it, and he built the whole generation of Lubavitchers with this and other ideas. So if the time is right and the energy is right, then maybe we could talk more about it, but right now we'll go further. So he became the Nossi of Lubavitch, Yud Shvat, Tovshin Yud Aleph. So Lubavitch Chassidim today share with the world not only the Yortzeit of the Frierdiker Rebbe, which is a standard thing by alle Yidden. You celebrate the Yortzeit of a Tzaddik, you give Tikkun, L'chaim, and everything else, but also the leadership. So when we talk about Nesias, you talk about leadership, there's all kinds of Nesias. I wrote a book called World Rebbe. This Lubavitcher Rebbe, this last Rebbe, if you take a look at his life and what he did from a very young age and into his teenhood and then a young adulthood and adulthood, he had very, very, what we call in English, grandiose ideas. Kreise Hashuris, and he was really a visionary. Just like the Satmar Ruv was a visionary with his Chassidim, to go to the streets with the ganze Lavush and the Streimel and the Peyus and the Bekesha and the Weiße and everything else. And if you don't like it, too bad. He did that for Seine Menschen. With our Rebbe, he saw the idea of Yidentum, of Judaism, Frumkeit and Chassidishkeit, to take it to the streets of the world, including in Timbuktu, in places you would never think of a Fruma Yid being there, right? And that's what everyone knows is called the Shluchim. The Shluchim of the Rebbe, the emissaries, the messengers of the Rebbe, they went all out, myself included. I was in a place called Marin County for 8 years, in Northern California, across the Golden Gate Bridge. If you went there, you would think that you're in Gan Eden. Why in Gan Eden? because the physical...
No Jews there.
Wait. That was below the belt, as we say. But anyway, the mountains, I could walk up the mountains, the deer would come down, quiet, really, really gorgeous, right? But Yiddishkeit-wise, there was goodness, nothing. And we were the only official Frume organization, Chabad. And there was one Reform temple, one conservative, and one Reconstructionist, and ourselves. And there were 19,000 Yidden, 19,000 Jews that lived there according to the demographics of the Federation. And this is where the Rebbe sent us, right? So the Rebbe did this idea, and it became more and more. Today there was 5,000-6,000 shluchim with Chabad houses, but in my time, I was from when we had a kinnis in my time, Shalom. You know how many chevra came? 80 to 100. That's it. 80 to 100. And today is 5. Yeah, when we were yeshiva in the 70s, they didn't even have 80 to 100. Yeah. No, they had a few that.
But they didn't have any.
No, they had no kinnis. They had no kinnis. Yeah. Anyway, so Chabad, Lubavitch, like many other organizations and groups and Chassidus and yeshivas, were small. You know, we come out of the Holocaust, we come out of decimation, of destruction, and we rebuilt. And we could say, Baruch Hashem, for Klal Yisrael, that Frumkeit, what they call orthodoxy of all kinds, is so much stronger today. There's no comparison. And conservative shuls and reformed temples are closing down, and it ends up in a young Israel, a Chabad, this, that. People are taking over, and it's a matter of time before that many of those institutions and will be closed. Unfortunately, there's a lot of assimilation, I don't have to tell you. And what we're dealing with today is another issue, which maybe we'll talk a little more about later, where you young people can really be effective. And that is to show the relevance of Frumkeit and Chassidishkeit, for those that are Chassidim, to the younger people. And there's a lot of people that are going through sveikis and doubts of all sorts. And this is something that, you know, they've institutionalized it today by calling it OTD and OP-PI and FI with all kinds of names. And but it's a reality. It's a reality. I deal with this in a lot of my work, and there's serious issues. So we know that, and it could be corrected if we adopt a certain approach. I think of real love and Ahavas Yisrael, and then there are stories. I can tell you stories upon stories how in the 60s and 70s. When a boy or a girl from Williamsburg or Borough Park or Crown Heights left the fold, and ran away, it was Lubavitch, Chabad, in all of these places that they had a place to go to. And I'll give you an example. Someone was out in a place called Santa Cruz. Santa Cruz is out in Northern California. And it's a very liberal type of place, with heathenism. Heathenism means grubkeit. In Yiddish, it means grubkeit, and in the 70s, this was a very big spot for, cyclists and drugs, and there was
Psychedelics.
Yeah, psychedelics was in the 60s, going to the 70s, right. I'm actually doing the parsha now, because I'm writing about someone who was into psychedelics, so it should be an interesting book when it comes out. But anyway, the Kuda is, so this Lubavitcher was there for a talk. Simon Jacobson from Chabad, Yossi's older brother. Simon. He was at that time. They were still doing book tours, and stores were doing. Authors were coming and speaking. Today it's already pretty much outdated. I did it myself in Baltimore and places, but today it's not something that goes because people barely read. Everything is online. Anyway, so. He goes out there, and a woman comes to a talk he's giving, and she looks at him, and she says, "What are you doing here?" So he says, "I'm not allowed to be here." She says, "I thought I ran away from you." And she says she was a Borough Park girl, and she, couldn't relate to whatever the issues were, and she escaped, and she wanted to go so far away, so she picked Santa Cruz. And Lepoyo, she was listening to him. Again, I think he said that she ultimately became a Balas Tshuva. But my point is that if the Rebbe, the Rebbe that we celebrate today, his Nesias, what he brought and brings to the world, if he would have not invested in this mahalach, in this approach, then yeah, you Chevra, from Borough Park and Lakewood and Muncie and Williamsburg, all of us, us, me, myself included, we would be involved, fine. But what about the thousands and hundreds of Yidden that are all over, they're part of Klal Yisrael? How do you expect Mashiach to come if there's missing pieces to the puzzle? And that's what the Rebbe dedicated himself to. And it's they always would say, I don't know if you probably heard it growing up, maybe your parents, grandparents, like, yeah, this is a gite Zach for Lubavitch Satin. Lubavitch darf mekarev zan Yidden. Lubavitch has to bring people closer. We have to be Borough Park, Williamsburg, Flatbush, Grand Heights, and Muncie, and Kiryas Yoel, v'chulu. But this has to change. It's not anymore just Lubavitch. It has to be every Yid. Why? Because Yidden need Yidden. Yidden need Yidden. And the fact is that today so many Yidden from our communities they're going out. So B'meila, we come to a Fabrengen, we come to a Chassidische Fabrengen, and it's a Yoim Mesugel. It's really a Yoim Mesugel. We come to such a bit L'chaim. We come to a Fabrengen. Thank you. And sit together and sing Tanigim, Mehet Avort. It's an opportunity, and it's great to be with younger people. Shalom and I are in the seniors here. We're the same age, and if we all work together in any way, shape, or form, we could make great impacts on everyone. L'chaim, l'chaim, l'chaim. So this is the niggin. I started with a niggin, and I didn't sing the niggin. I was darshaning.